Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to show you how to make a protein bar that won't taste like sand and won't choke you. This velvety soft chocolate treat has 10 ingredients and each bar contains approximately 10 grams of protein. I think ultimately most protein bars in the market are a dessert because of the sugar content that they have, but the difference with this one is that it also tastes like a dessert. I started the work on this video by recreating a typical dry protein bar. I added a date caramel layer and a crispy layer to the bars, as well as I covered them in chocolate. They came out tasting good, but it was nothing groundbreaking. I wanted to create something that I would be absolutely impatient to devour, not just another chalky-ish protein bar. I did a lot of research and I found the answer right under my nose. The perfect protein bar already exists. Well, kinda. It doesn't have quite enough protein and it has way too much sugar, but it exists, so I decided to adapt it. This treat is a traditional Latvian dessert and it's called šokolādes sieriņš. Traditionally, it's made using dairy, but vegan alternatives are very well established in the market by now. This vegan tofu version is my absolute favorite. Inspired by this tofu bar, I set out on a mission to create the creamiest, most delicious and nutritious protein bar that I could. I chose to base this recipe on Silken tofu because of something that went viral a couple of years ago. There was a moment when social media was absolutely taken over by this 2-ingredient chocolate mousse. It is much runnier and smoother than the dessert I'm basing my bars on, and if I would try to recreate this dessert exactly, I would just use harder tofu. But since we're making protein bars and we are going to be adding other ingredients to up the protein content, we don't have to worry about the thickness. The ingredients that we add are going to make the mixture thicker and thus much more similar to the Latvian dessert called šokolādes sieriņš. Let's take a look at the ingredients. Here I have my favorite protein powder. I'm using rice protein because I like how smooth the texture is. It is very easy to incorporate into recipes, and also the flavor is neutral, which I really appreciate. The next ingredient is almond flour. Now, when it comes to almond flour, you could skip it and just use a bit more protein powder instead, but I do like the texture and the fat that the almond flour brings into this recipe. Now, arguably the most important ingredient, chocolate, of course. This one is at 75% cacao, but you can choose any chocolate you like. Since I really appreciate the flavor balance in this chocolate, I am not going to be adding any sweetener, but if you prefer, you could add some maple syrup or agave syrup or even powdered sugar. Just make sure the sugar is not too coarse, use powdered, because otherwise you'll just have crunchy bits in your final product. Next up, we have silken tofu. It's quite important that the silken tofu is room temperature because the tofu contains a lot of water and chocolate doesn't really like water. The tofu being at a room temperature really helps to incorporate the chocolate without it seizing too much. Another ingredient that's going to bring a bit of sweetness are dates. We are going to be soaking these dates in hot water. After they are fully soaked, we're going to blend them. To the dates, I'm also going to be adding a bit of vanilla for some flavor. Then we have coconut oil. This one is deodorized. You could use a regular if you prefer the coconut flavor. And finally, I have some salt and amaranth. The amaranth might not look like much now, but we're gonna make amaranth popcorn, and it is going to be a perfect crunchy layer for our bars. This will be enough for approximately 15 to 14 bars, depending on how many times you lick your spatula. I'll start by pitting the dates and soaking them in hot water. I'm also going to add vanilla to the dates, and since I'm using the pod, I'm also going to soak the pod in the hot water together with the dates and just remove it later before blending. Next, we are going to make the amaranth popcorn. I love amaranth for its nutritional value. It also pops nicely with no oil and no pre-cooking. The pan has to be quite hot. Do 1 tablespoon of amaranth at a time and keep it moving. Cover for 5 seconds, swirl it around, then remove from the pan and set it aside to cool in a dry bowl. These bars are going to have 3 layers: amaranth crunch, date caramel, and chocolate mousse. You can choose any order of layers you like, but I think I'm gonna go with caramel on top, then chocolate mousse, and the crunch on the bottom, which means that we have to go in with the caramel first. To make the caramel, all we need to do is blend the dates with the soaking water. If you're using vanilla pods, remove them before blending and also make sure all your dates are pitted. When the caramel is ready, we can fill the molds. Try filling the caramel in a thin layer, and once you're done, place the molds in the freezer so the layer can solidify while we make the next one. Chocolate mousse. You need a pot with a bit of water and a heat-proof bowl for melting the chocolate. I'm going to use a double boiler to melt the chocolate, but you can use a microwave if you prefer. While the chocolate is melting to a blender, we can add Silken tofu, protein powder, and almond flour and mix everything until the ingredients are well incorporated. When everything is mixed, it's time to add the chocolate. It's best to add the chocolate gradually while the blender is going on slow, but it's also totally fine to add it all at once, close the blender, and then mix. When the mixture is nice and smooth and the chocolate is evenly incorporated, it's time to take your molds out of the freezer. You can top them with the mousse, leaving a bit of space on top, and then you have to place them back in the freezer and wait until the mousse solidifies a bit. After approximately 30 minutes, when the mousse starts to solidify, we can add the next layer, our amaranth crunch. When it comes to amaranth, one thing you have to keep in mind, the moment it's gonna come in touch with moisture, it's gonna start going soggier and soggier until it's completely soggy. So in order to prevent that, we are going to enrobe it in chocolate before adding it to the bars. Melt some chocolate and add your crispies of choice. Then take the molds out of the freezer and top them with the mixture. Then you can place them back in the freezer. Since chocolate doesn't have any water, it works as a great seal and helps keep the amaranth crunchy. I'm going to leave my bars in the freezer till tomorrow, but normally it should take anywhere between 2 to 4 hours for them to freeze. It's the next day and it's time for the fun part, dipping our bars in chocolate. Don't press the toothpick with force or it will break. You have to screw it like a screw. Once the toothpick is in, quickly dip the bar into the chocolate, place it on the baking paper and turn the toothpick in the opposite direction to remove it. If you don't have enough chocolate for dipping, use a spoon to spoon the chocolate over the bar. If you melt more chocolate than you need, no worries, you can make little crunch bars using the amaranth popcorn. It's gonna solidify really quickly and be super delicious. When ready, place the bars in boxes and immediately store them in the fridge. They are going to last approximately a day in a room temperature if it's not too hot, more than a week in the fridge, and you can keep them in the freezer for many months, I think at least half a year. These bars are silky soft when they they are room temperature. And I honestly prefer eating them at room temperature, but straight out of the fridge is perfectly fine and delicious as well. You'll find both recipes for 10 grams of protein per bar and 15 grams of protein per bar in the description. For the 15-gram bar, you have to add more rice protein to the mousse, and instead of adding amaranth to a separate layer, it's added to the coating, thus using less chocolate and concentrating the protein content per 100 grams. Subscribe to the channel for more delicious vegan recipes and cooking deep dives. Let me know if you make this recipe and what you would like to see made next, and I will talk to you in the comments and see you in the next one. Bye!